It's an At the Office edition of the East Bank Sports Show, serving up the hottest sports takes from right here in Cleveland, Ohio. It's your host, Noah, John, and Erik.
Hey, everybody. Welcome into The Office, the podcast where we talk all things sports. I'm your host, Erik, and I'm joined by my co-host, Noah. You can join us at The Office too. Send us a comment on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter, or text the show at 216-250-1411. That's 216-250-1411. John couldn't make it this week. I couldn't make it last week. I promise we'll get the band back together next week. But until then, Noah, how are you doing tonight?
I'm okay, man. We start the show with some technical difficulties there. Yes, I know you don't like when I mention that, but I'm gonna take the blame because you're at the in the host chair. So I'm gonna let myself take the blame for the technical difficulties to get us started. But no complaints, man. Been a busy ass day, and I'm ready to talk some sports with you, brother.
All right, let's get into it. First of all, that's okay. It happens to the best of us. We're still learning. We're still growing. I'm excited for a couple of today's topics. We're going to try to keep the show a little more on pace. We're not going to go our 2-hour ramble this time, especially without John. But to start things off, I want to hear your 30 seconds takes on the Guardians. We now have gone through 2 Guardians Yankees ALCS games. Well, let's hear your 30-second take, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, do you want to run the timer since you have controls so that way, and we'll just keep both of our ourselves in check here?
I do, as soon as I can get to that section. All right, you ready?
I'm ready to roll. I'm feeling decently cautiously optimistic right now with this series. We have 3 games going into Cleveland. I think this is a very home biased team. I think you saw that in the last series. The Yankees are tough. They're the best team in the AL this year for a reason. We're playing with house money. I'm still having a good time. I actually have tickets for the next 2 games, so I'm really hoping they win 2 and make it interesting into game 5, 6, 7. But we'll see. They look like the lights were the brightest, and that's about it.
I was ready to mute you. You cut it off real quick there at the end.
Yeah, we'll ramble for a second before we go on the next topic, but I'll let you do your 30-second take real quick.
Yeah, so for me, I keep hearing, I think we hit it at the same time. We keep hearing that the Yankees are very beatable. I keep hearing that around the actual office, but we're not beating them. We're making little mistakes. The Yankees are playing their game plan. They're getting plenty of walks. They're getting their power hitters to hit. And we just don't look very good. Where have our bats gone? We need to step it up. But that said, I'll be cautiously optimistic too. I'll say Guards in 7.
So real quick, I just want to wrap this up with what my take was really going to be because we have some extra time. It's just the 2 of us today. You know what I mean? They've had some costly errors, and I think that's really been the nail in the coffin for them the first 2 games. I don't foresee them doing this in Cleveland on a field they're obviously very used to playing on. And that's what gives me the optimism still that they can pull out, 2-3 wins in Cleveland and then make it a fun game 6, game 7, pull one out in New York and break their hearts and move on to the World Series. Of course, I can see it the other way too. We are down 0-2, so don't get me over here and say I'm quoting we're winning no matter what. But I'm still feeling good about it. I'm not down in the dumps per se. What about you, man?
I don't know. We just don't look like a team that can beat them right now. And, maybe coming home, we can turn that around. We need that spark. I'll say this too, though, that neither team looks like a team that can beat the National League teams. I think the Dodgers will eventually show out, and I know it's tied right now. But we don't look like teams that can compete with them at all. So I'm not sure what's going on. I hope we can turn it around. Like Tim said, our pitching worries him. We have the best bullpen in baseball, but the problem is when you're facing a team that can take one swing of the bat and change the game, we're not that type of team, and I think that hurts us. But keep in mind, too, that Yankee Stadium has the shortest porch in all of baseball in right field. So it changes a little playing at the Jake, as it will always be known. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. I mean, these next two are must win for me, and to go back to New York tied. So if we can get out of Cleveland with 2 wins, I think we're right back in it, like you said.
Well, just so you're aware too, I don't know if you're just saying the first 2 games, but we have 3 games in Cleveland back to back, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday.
That's
And
right.
then they
we
go
do.
back to New York. So I think, taking 2 out of 3 there and going back to New York and having meaningful game 6, game 7 with a short porch, with some confidence instilled in these young guys could mean, the difference, honestly, especially because the Yankees in recent memory, 2007 or 2009 was their last championship. I forget.
2009.
In the last 15 years or so, they always end up crumbling in the playoffs regardless of seeding. I'm not saying that'll happen this year. This is a really talented Yankee team. I'm not coming on here and being, the homer take Noah that I tend to be. But with that being said, I could see that happening still. And that's me being optimistic, but cautiously optimistic. It is still the Yankees. They are still the best team in the AL, despite the whole nation, the whole world absolutely hating them.
Yeah, I think
Except
the only people I'm rooting for the Guardians all the way. The only people rooting besides, fans in New York, some fans in New York, for Yankees Dodgers would be the media, who would love that matchup. But other than that, no, I think the entire country's definitely pulling for us.
What about, real quick, and then I'll let you switch the topic, but what do you think about doing a Subway Series? Not that I think the Mets are going to win on the other side, but would you still be watching? Because I personally, at that point, I'm like, I don't care. New York's getting a championship and screw them both.
Personally, I'll watch no matter what. I keep saying I want the Mets to lose. I was saying that, not before the Dodgers. I'd rather them go than the Dodgers. I don't actually have any hate towards Frankie. I wouldn't mind seeing him get a ring. Subway Series was kind of fun back in 2000. That's the Yankees beat the Mets in 2000 in, I want to say it was 7 games. Don't fact check me on that. I don't remember.
I can't. I was 1 month old when
fair.
that series happened. So
that's when guys like Mike Piazza were playing. Do you even know who that is?
No, name recognition at the very least.
But that was a Yankees team that was featuring guys like Jeter too, at the height of their career. So it's a very different team now. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm still pulling for the Guards, obviously. We have a team that can win. We just got to get it done. We got to stop making the little mistakes. You can't gift them runs.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%.
All right, buddy, let's move on. So this week, we've been talking a lot about the Ohio State Buckeyes and Ryan Day. We lost in the last seconds to Oregon. We lost by 1 point. We're both wearing Buckeye gear today. And
shout out GV Artwork real quick. Best clothing brand in Cleveland. Not sponsored. Just love their stuff.
They do make incredible shirts. Go check them out for sure. Cool guy as well. There's a lot of talk about Ryan Day and how warm his seat is getting as the Ohio State Buckeyes coach. So I want to talk about that. And I want to jump in first because I really wanted to do this topic because I think it's a ridiculous topic. It has nothing to do with wanting to talk about should Ryan Day be replaced. It has everything to do with, no, you guys are nuts. Absolutely, he should not be replaced.
But why do you say that? I want you to get into that because I feel like after that loss to Oregon, that is a really popular opinion to have. He hasn't pulled out a big one out of him yet. And we're
1 point loss on the road, but go on.
I agree with you, but we're Ohio State.
You're right. There's a level, and the level for Ohio State is here, certainly. But my first question when we talk about replacing a coach, first of all, the man who's the biggest Kevin Stefanski fan in the world, I don't understand. I don't understand the whataboutism with Ryan Day, but we'll table that for a second.
Well, I was going to use that in some of my argument, but I'll let you you off. But calling myself out, but go ahead, do your thing, man.
Fair enough. So for me, the first question you have to ask when you talk about firing a head coach is who's going to replace him. And we know who the short list probably is for Ohio State, and that is Marcus Freeman. It's Vrabel, maybe Dan Lanning, maybe Lincoln Riley. Those are the college coaches that I could realistically see replacing him, right?
Right.
I don't think Freeman's ready. Vrabel has said that he doesn't really want to recruit, and I don't know how he would coach Ohio State, but I certainly don't think his boring style of football in the NFL would translate well to Ohio State. I think Dan Lanning's a good coach. He certainly outcoached Day, at least at the end of the game last week. Lincoln Riley, I don't know. He's all show, in my opinion. There's one name, maybe two names that I could get on board with. The first name is a guy by the name of Nick Saban. I'm not saying he's available, but there are a few jobs in this world that when they come open, you almost have your pick. And Ohio State is one of those jobs. I think he's kind of sick of sitting next to Pat McAfee on the weekend.
Already,
You could see it on his face. You see that, why did I quit coaching? I don't think it would take much to convince him to come. We have the roster. We have the talent. He would bring the recruiting. He's somebody that could step in and do the job and do the job well. The second pick is a little out there for me, but my second pick, what if it's Bill Belichick? I know that seems crazy.
I knew you were going to say Bill Belichick when you said two.
You know he can recruit. Everybody would come play for Bill. Get ready for the NFL. Are you kidding me? I don't know about going on the road and recruiting and talking to families. That probably maybe we'll lean on Brian Hartline a little. That's another name that will get tossed around, by the way, that I don't think would be one. Tim, in regards to Chip Kelly, we've seen that song and dance. I don't think he's the guy either. He's a brilliant offensive mind, but we've seen what he's done as head coach. I'm not even sure the man wants to be head coach anymore. He was running the program at UCLA and chose to become an offensive coordinator. Again, I know it's the Buckeyes, but I'm not sure that Chip Kelly's that right person. I've also heard, I can't believe I've heard this name, but I've heard Luke Fickell thrown out again. First of all, been there, done that. Second of all, if you've watched Wisconsin, no, we don't want Luke freaking Fickell. There is, and that's my problem. My point, and I have some other points, but my point is, it is a level for Ohio State. And I say, who's next? And the recruiting part, I don't think we can understate, because we have unbelievable recruiting classes coming in to play for Ryan Day. Now, let me point out the shortcomings real quick. He lost that game.
I want to jump in real quick, because this whole the coaching list thing was my counterpoint to myself, because I'm kind of on the side of maybe a change is what's best for the program, just because we haven't seen the sustained level of success that you normally see out of Ohio State, right?
Sure.
But the knock on my argument there, which is funny because I'm starting with the knock. Normally I wouldn't start with my own knock, but here we are because you brought it up first, is who? I mean, who's going to be better than Ryan Day? And you went through the list of names that I thought of prior to the show. I literally had a whole bullet point of potential coaches, and all of them are like, or is Nick Saban really going to come out of retirement after retiring? Same points that you made and all of that. You know, Bill Belichick was a name I thought you might bring up if we got down this rabbit hole just for the hell of it. It's funny. I don't think he's ever going to coach in college.
I don't either.
No, I know. So to me, the biggest knock is, you could say fire Ryan Day. It's time to get rid of him. But what are we replacing him with? What is out there that excites you to the point where you want to fire a guy? Vrabel, maybe, but he's, in deep with the Browns right now. And we don't know what the Browns front office, coaching staff, roster, ownership, for all we know, is going to look like here at the end of the season.
Did you hear about Vrabel, by the way, though? The rumor?
What?
Apparently he was at, and forgive me, I want to say it was like a women's hockey game, but the day after the Oregon loss, he was down on campus at an Ohio State women's hockey game. So there are a lot of rumors what's that about? I don't buy into them, for the record. Listen, I think Ryan Day's leash is this. We know he's going to make the playoff this year. It's expanded. There's no way he's not. And the only way he's out is if he loses to Michigan again. He could even lose to Penn State and go into the playoff. And if he does lose to Michigan, which I don't think will happen, if he wins the national championship, he's still there. Now, that said, yeah, you're absolutely right. Who are you going to get? I don't think Saban's completely out of the question, for the record. Maybe guys that know Alabama football know better than me, but I don't know. Coaching doesn't
I would
leave
argue
you.
that I think he's out just because of how quick the turnaround is and the history we've seen, guys like Urban Meyer or whatever, who, if they're jumping off of college football and going broadcast, maybe they'll take an NFL job, but they're at the mindset of been there, done that, at least at the time. Urban Meyer's making a return. I'm all the way here for this, family connection or not, because I loved Urban Meyer in Ohio State because we won a national championship with him.
Urban came back to college before the NFL stint too, don't forget. I mean, he left Florida, took some time off, was doing broadcasting, then came to Ohio State.
No, and I know that too. I agree, but he took time off, not one season, and jumped in because a big name school was there. He took a couple seasons. I don't know,
That's a big
man.
name school, buddy. We're a big name school. Saban doesn't want to crack at Ohio State. The other point, though, is that I believe in longevity of coaches. Now, I'm not saying you should stick with, I don't know, let's just pick on Hugh Jackson for a minute. I'm not saying you should stick with a guy just to stick with a guy, but you are talking about a winner in Ryan Day. We talk about him not really losing regular season games. I get it that Michigan is a monkey on his back, but let's go through some of them real quick. So he lost against Oregon by 1 point. By the way, we're pretty much in field goal range. We should have sealed that win, but for two things. The 12-man on the field penalty, that is a loophole that the NCAA has now closed. It's actually kind of interesting because if you have 12 men on the field now, within 2 minutes on either side of the half, the offensive team will get to choose whether or not to restart that clock. It's a 5-yard penalty no matter what, but whether or not they want the clock to go back to the time that was on the clock prior to the penalty in the play,
right,
or keep it where it's at, because sometimes it would behoove teams to have some clock run. The exception to that rule, though, is if a player, they have to be in the play. If they're actively trying to get their way off the field, you cannot have the clock reset, which I thought was kind of interesting. 12 men's 12 men. I thought that was weird.
The nitty gritty, regardless. I think that's the right call too, real quick to jump in here. But
100%.
Even though it hurts me as an Ohio State fan, it's good strategy on Oregon's part. They know what they're doing, and I can't really knock them or be upset because they found a loophole in a rule and used it when they needed to.
Coach Lanning said they've practiced that. I mean, that's
right.
That's some coaching.
I just wanted to throw that out there because I feel like sometimes we can be very pessimistic and almost like, I don't know, Steelers fans-esque as Ohio State fans and like shake our finger because something didn't go our way. And to me, as a football purist, I like to say, or whatever, a former player, to me, that's just good football. That's just good coaching and not our fault, not anyone's fault other than some damn good studying by Lanning and co.
They were prepared, and I don't think we were ill prepared. The line might have been, but Howard had them. He was ready to snap the ball. I think he was well aware that the clock was running. Of course, he makes that mistake and slides too late to end the game. It's a bummer, but it happens. My point is, we were right there to win that game. We do win it on neutral ground or at home. Not too worried about it. I'll get to what I am worried about in a second. That last Michigan loss, again, we're driving to make the win. We throw a pick at the end. It doesn't come off, but we're in control there at the end and driving for the win. And then the last one I'll touch on is Georgia. We kicked a field goal for the win against the eventual national championships. That's one of the best play calling games I've seen Ryan Day call. It got a little iffy at the end, but he called a hell of a game, and we were right there. He's 8-8 against top 10 teams. He took us to a national championship. By the way, beating Clemson and getting that off our back to get there. I don't think he's a washed coach, and I think this conversation's premature. The conversation that's not premature is defense. Jim Knowles' defense.
Can I jump in here? Because this was what my take was going to be. Yeah. So right here, right now was going to be my take. Yes, you can be upset with Ryan Day's background, right? I am a little bit too. I think there's a lot of, holes to poke there. If he loses to Michigan, and then loses in the playoffs, there's different ways you can look at this. To me, the biggest problem is they bring Jim Knowles in to shore up the defense, right? And we have not seen that happen since Jim Knowles was brought in.
Hold on, pause real quick, because we did see one part of it. He really shored up the run defense after those losses to Michigan because they were carving us up. I mean, that just exposed other holes, but go on.
Yeah, but we're still allowing too many points, for example, right? And I know it's college football and there's a lot of scoring, and that's kind of the allure to it sometimes, is the big over-the-top plays and those kind of things you see because it's, lesser athletes against eventual NFL guys. I digress. To me, if you're going to make any type of move, and I have always adamantly said you shouldn't make a move in season with coaching and that kind of thing. I just think it shakes a locker room way too much. I think it doesn't do anything. It does more harm than good, even if the coach has already lost the locker room, my humble opinion. If they're going to make a move, unless they know they're going to get someone, personally, I wouldn't mind Vrabel as the head coach of Ohio State, depending on what pieces he puts around him, because yes, his offense is boring. Knowles would be the move I would personally make and move forward with, trying again with a different defensive coordinator that can bring some new scheming, some new passion, some new fire into this class. And to me, at the end of the day, Ryan Day only does so much in this bigger pie of football. I think we kind of forget that when it comes to head coaches. Like, they're the manager, right? And yes, they're the first to blame because they're the manager. But there's pieces and parts and, little, things going around all over here that could be the core root to the problem, like a potential Jim Knowles or something, maybe a D-line coach. Like, we're still such a good program, and recruit and transfer, have so many transfers come in, that kind of thing, that it's hard to pick and prod, even when, you lose to Michigan or you lose to an Oregon and everybody goes up in arms. That's kind of my thing. I think Jim Knowles is suspect number one here as opposed to Ryan Day. But yeah.
I agree with that. First of all, I agree with your take on defense and line too, because we have not had a key linebacker edge rusher since Chase Young and the Bosa brothers.
Yeah.
Where is that key player, that really marquee name player? We haven't had him. And I don't want you to tell me Tommy Eichenberg was that guy, because he wasn't.
I was going to mention like the lack of key defensive players. I mean, you see corners, you see that, secondary players, but talking about that edge rusher, that guy, we haven't really had a defensive lineman like that. And I was going to say we need to recruit better, but at the same time, when you have all these transfers come in, it looks like you buy all the way in on a season like we did this year. And still, it has a chance to pan out, of course, with an expanded playoff. And, one-loss teams were making it in the 4-team playoff anyway, if they go undefeated. I digress. I was just going to point that out as well. I feel like we're very much on the same wavelength with this topic.
No, we are for sure. And you know what? I think it's systemic too, a little bit of the modern college game. We put so much emphasis on the high-flying offense.
Yeah.
But we also gave up 20-plus points. And yes, Jim Knowles, Jim Knowles is getting paid head coach money at almost any other school. We're paying him a lot of money to have really what's been piss poor defensive scheming, honestly. And the stat that really struck me is in the last 5 losses that we've had at Ohio State, we have not forced a fourth quarter punt in a single one of them.
I saw that today too.
That's
that was on
nuts.
My notes as well. Yeah, that's insane to me.
So defense needs to be shored up, and I don't care how you fix the problem, but fix it now. If that means bringing in a new defensive coordinator right now, I don't care. Do it. I mean, hell, throw $10 million at Bill Belichick if you need to. That defense needs fixed.
You're obsessed
I don't
with
think he'd
Bill,
take that job, but
no,
he was a defensive genius.
No, I know, I agree.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to for me. They're to blame for sure. I don't think Day's the answer. I think he recruits really well. I think what I look for most in a head coach, and we've talked about this before, I think a head coach needs to be a leader of men. And I think that is Ryan Day. I've seen his locker room speeches. He is a leader. Now, you're absolutely right. The blame is piled at his feet, even if Jim Knowles' defense is terrible, even if this, even if that. He is the head coach, and he needs them ready. He needs his coaches ready, and he needs some better game management. But what I like about Ryan Day as well, he's not unwilling to adapt. We've been saying for a couple years now, you've got to stop calling plays. Stop calling plays. Stop calling plays. And unlike Stefanski, who says, I'm going to keep calling plays, the man goes out and gets one of the best offensive minds in football and stop calling plays. I don't know what more you want for him. And I know the answer is beat Michigan, win a national championship. These things aren't easy. And I understand looking at Nick Saban's career and what happened at Alabama, that should be Ohio State, but it's not that easy. It doesn't work that way. We won one, obviously, with Urban. We should have won one the next year, but we had that loss to Michigan State. By the way, for everyone that puts Urban on that pedestal, I get it. He didn't lose those big games, but he was also losing to Purdue, to Penn State, etc. He was losing those nothing games in the middle of the season. That indecision between JT Barrett and 12 gauge that started that season after our championship run, that cost us another run at a championship. I think that team was actually better, but because we lost, to Michigan State, we didn't get a shot. My point is, these decisions and what's happening, they don't happen in a vacuum. We have to take the whole picture into account. Yeah, I get it. The Ohio State University, the Ohio State Buckeyes, they should be on the top every single year. But we've won, in my lifetime, 2 national championships. 2002 under Tressel, and then a whole nother regime later under Urban. And he won one as well. I think it's time to pause the hate a little bit. I think we'll continue to get good recruiting classes. I think the coaching will be there, and it will be our year, but losses happen, and they're going to happen. I don't blame like that Missouri loss. I don't really care about that.
I think the big thing here too, and I think the point that you made that really highlights the whole argument, and I think why people are up in arms about Ryan Day, and even me sometimes, like I was saying fire Ryan Day at the dive bar I was watching the game at, even though like I'm not really thinking, I'm just upset we lost and I maybe had 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 Miller Lights beforehand. I digress. I think Nick Saban kind of has ruined this perception a little bit for fans. You know what I mean? I think Nick Saban makes it... People think that, oh, well, if you have a team like we do, where we bought all in this year, we have all these players, these transfers, Jeremiah Smith is playing, otherworldly,
unbelievable.
as a freshman.
True
that
freshman.
You should just, right. That you should just go win a national championship when it's not that easy. Football is not a sport where even when you're the best team on the field, you can still lose a game. Any given Sunday is a phrase about the sport of football, not just the NFL. The sport of football. You could be a team that is 0-9, and for some reason you beat the 9-0 team in week 10 of a high school football game just because whatever, they overlooked you. It is that ticky-tacky of a sport where if you're not on your A game or something little happens, the whole script could flip. It's a momentum game. So
100%.
To me, I think Nick Saban has ruined this a little bit in terms of perception because of how many times they make it and win. And maybe even a little bit of Georgia too, because they're up there all the time. But we gotta take a step back and really take it all in and see, who's won this. There's teams all the time that go through this and then end up winning a national championship. And I think you highlight it the best when you talk about the Tressel and then the Urban Meyer regime. They both only had one.
And those are, Tressel was, but yeah.
Tressel, you know what I mean. I'm thinking from when I was born until now, I guess. But they both only had, one in that span of 2000 on. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that tells the story right there. That's just me.
And I think that's the other, we are a top 5 program. I don't mean now, I mean in history. We're one of the top programs in college football, period. So when you lose to an Oregon that is not a blue chip program, I don't care what you say. I saw today some headline, are they whatever? No, they're not. I think that because our expectations are impossible, we really have 2 expectations every year. It's beat Michigan and it's win a national championship. If we don't do those 2 things, the season is a failure. We were arguing the other day about, whether or not you win a Super Bowl determines whether or not the season's a failure. Regardless of that argument, I think even John would agree that, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but if you don't beat Michigan and you don't win a national championship, it is a failure of a season. That is the level for Ohio State. Yeah. So it's tough. And maybe it's a different conversation, or it's probably the same conversation, but maybe it's a different feeling as well. If, Tressel had 3 opportunities to win a national championship and he won 1. Urban had 2 opportunities actually in the title game and he won 1. And we had 1 opportunity right now under Ryan Day, and he lost the one against a Bama team that we were not expected to win at all. So I think in time it'll be proven. I would love to see Ryan Day there for a long, long time, and I hope we do well. But for now, I think we're with them, and we'll keep on winning. With that, I do want to break for commercial. We're going to take a quick break. I want you guys to stay tuned, though, because when we come back, we're going to talk everybody's either favorite or least favorite topic, which is the Browns. So we'll be back after this. And welcome back to At the Office. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button for us on YouTube and check us out on Instagram and TikTok. Shout out to our partners, the Fanatical Elves and Fan First Sports. If I could say that, Fans First Sports. They have some great shows that you should check out as well. Now, Noah, I know you love the Browns. Highs and lows. There's a lot of lows right now. But what I want to hear is specific to Browns ownership. Has the Browns fan loyalty been taken for granted by ownership over the years? And I want us to focus exclusively on the Haslam ownership. I don't think we need to peek backwards. But has Browns fan loyalty been taken for granted? Start us off.
100%. The answer to this question is 100%. But A, it's self-inflicted, and B, every owner does that. That's what kind of makes this conversation fun, right? To me, right, I'm a Browns fan, diehard, number 1 team. I put them above any of the 4 sports teams I mainly follow, whether that be Ohio State, the Guardians, the Cavs, or the Browns. Number 1 in my heart. Always have been, always will be, probably because of my connection to the sport. We are still giving this guy money, even after all of the poor decisions we have seen since he's bought this team. It is self-inflicted pain as well. So if you're going to be mad at Jimmy Haslam, I think you have to be a little bit mad at yourself too, as much as that might hurt to say. But when you're spending $150 on tickets, or if you're a season ticket member upset about whatever gift you get and they raised your price again, did you pay for the tickets still? Because if the answer is yes, you need to look in the mirror a little bit too. At the end of the day, I kind of think I'm taking this from an Erik perspective of they're millionaire. What?
I said,
They're millionaires. They're billionaires.
They're billionaires, yeah.
They don't care about being Erik. Even if we sit here and say Jimmy Haslam sucks and swear up a storm, he's laughing while he's counting his oil money and his Browns money. He does not care about us. He cares about the bottom line and the paycheck and the money that goes into this. And yes, I think in recent times, he's done a lot of good things in terms of opening up the pocketbook to try to make a run at a Super Bowl and give the fans what they want. But 100% we're being taken granted for. It's a business about fandom, about a team that you have no real tie to. It's not like a college where you could have went there and yes, you want to see them win. The only reason we like Cleveland sports is because we're from the area and we grew up around it. And I love the fact that that's a thing and a part of our pastime and a part of our culture, obviously, or else I wouldn't be doing these shows every week with some of my best buddies in the entire world, or however you want to put it. But yeah, the billionaire doesn't care about us. They never have and they never will. Erik, go ahead, man.
Yeah, so believe it or not, I have the opposite opinion.
Interesting.
First of all, I agree that the billionaire does not care about us fans. Sports teams are here really to make money for the most part. Don't let that move to Brook Park fool you. That is a move that is designed to increase money in the Haslam's pockets. And that's fine. It's a business venture. That's fine. The reason I disagree with you is that since buying the team, yes, they've made some boneheaded decisions. Johnny Manziel comes to mind. Deshaun Watson obviously comes to mind. But they've put their money where their mouth is.
And I gave him credit for that, to be fair.
For me, that's all you can ask for. Yes, I would like them to stay out of more decisions. But let's look at some of the decisions that they've made. First of all, one of the things that they've prioritized after buying the team, they really wanted the fan experience beginning to end at the stadium, I'm talking, to be an A+ premier experience. The food has gotten better. They've redesigned. I don't know, for those that haven't been to Cleveland Brown Stadium before ownership.
Huntington Bank Field, get it right. They paid a lot of money
field,
for
but
that.
it's still Cleveland Brown Stadium. It's Huntington Bank Field at Cleveland Brown Stadium.
They don't mention anything. If you look next time, because we both are downtowners, if you look at any of the highway signs, Cleveland Brown Stadium is covered up on the direction sign.
It is, you're right.
And it says Huntington Bank Field, period.
All right, fair enough. Huntington, that's just weird. I'm going to call it Cleveland Brown Stadium.
It's Cleveland Brown Stadium. I'm just being an ass. Continue.
It doesn't sound right. Sherwin-Williams Stadium. Listen, if you've been inside prior to ownership and post ownership, they've really changed. Like even the hallways, they used to just be concrete. Very bare, very sad, depressing, reminds you of gray Cleveland winter walking through. And now they have more murals up. They have more, it seems like a little thing. Anyway, it
does a lot. I remember when it was just orange in the hallways and gray in the hallways. And I was a kid.
And it was nothing. Yeah.
Point, but still, I remember the difference now and then. There's atmosphere in Huntington Bank Field as opposed to, the early 2000s or whatever you want to frame that time period as.
Yeah, 99 to the mid 2000s. They've gone out and they've made changes at coaching level. They've gone out and they've gotten players, Juice Landry, and I mean, the list goes on and on. I don't need to name them all. But it's an organization where you need to win. And we say to ourselves, what exactly is happening with Cleveland? Because this is 25 years of sub-performing football. I take that back because we had 2 or 3 years of decent football, but my 20 plus years of terrible football. And I guess you can't say that it's anything other than a systemic, top-down organizational failure, because we've seen teams in that same time period come and go from success and sustain it or not sustain it, but they've seen more success than we have. We have one playoff win to show for it.
Right.
And while that was a landing point that we thought would be, only up from there, I think we all thought that the Browns had turned around finally. Here we are again talking about, will we get another win this season? Talking about
and what quarterback are we going to draft?
Matt feels like we're back in the Hugh Jackson era. And I don't lay that at Stefanski. I have my gripes with Stefanski, but I don't lay it at him. By the way, give up the fucking play calling. Like, it's not it, bro. Just give it up. And I don't know that it matters with the quarterback you have, but still, give it up.
I'm not going to jump in there, actually, because we'll go for hours, and we both have other things to do today. Continue.
I'll wrap it up quickly. We have no defense when we're supposed to have a defense. I don't know what's going on there. We have no run game. Our quarterback's seeing shadows when he's not, settling lawsuits. I'd love to have a quarterback that had less lawsuits than touchdowns. That would be amazing.
I love it. Yeah.
So,
Back to Jimmy,
but
though.
taking us for granted, I don't know. It's a bit far. They're doing what they can to win. It's just they're not doing the right things. I think they're morons. That's the problem. I think they're stupid rather than taking us. I think you have to have some level of intelligence in order to take the fans for granted. And I don't know that they have that. Clearly, yeah, for sure. I'm excited for Chubb to come back. I think we're all excited. I'm going to touch on him in my hot take today. I don't know. I'm at a loss at this point, but no, taking us for granted, I think it's just a little far. But I will say this. I think they do take for granted the fact that we show up every Sunday. We still sell the place out. We still watch on TV. We still buy merchandise. And I got to tell you, if we continue to lose like we have, they will face, and we've talked about this with baseball with the Guardians, they will face the worst thing that they can face, and that is apathy. Because I was watching the game last Sunday. I was over some friends watching it. And while I watched and was looking at plays, I was more into my conversation with the friends I was with than I was into the game. Because I just can't bring myself to care as much as I did. I'm definitely not letting them ruin my Sundays anymore. I'm not going to hate watch and just be sad afterwards. I'm going to move on with my life. If we win, cool, but I don't expect wins. It's that apathy that I think is the biggest danger to the Haslams and to the team. But at the end of the day, Cleveland is Brownstown, and that is not going to change. It's always going to be Brownstown. We were there for 0-16 and 1-15. We're going to continue to be there, but they've got to do something about the on-field product. I don't know if it's Jimmy just handing over control. They got to do something, because I think for fandoms that you and I have only known losing, and we're big football fans, but to continue to generate fandom for these younger generations that might not necessarily care about football, you got to win. You got to put product on the field. And if you don't do that, you might find yourself in a place, it might take 10 or 20 years, but you're going to lose fans, and that product that you bought that only goes up in value is going to start diminishing.
Yeah, so I agree with everything you said, but I think it spins back into the point that I think we are taken for granted, because but then it's hard. You can see the conflict if you're watching the video version. I'm conflicted because, yes, I do think we're all taken for granted as sports fans at the end of the day, period. We raise jersey prices all the time, ticket prices, and they know we're still going to pay them. That's taking us for granted, and, understand.
I would argue that's the NFL as a whole, but...
Well, the NFL as a whole takes their fans for granted. That's kind of where I'm at. But at the same time, even if they're wrong, they have done things to try to invest in this team and move in the right direction and settle down instead of firing a coach and a GM every year and doing things this way and that way and that way, like they were when Jimmy first got here. I think it's a harder question to answer than people would expect at the end of the day, because I don't think we'd even be worried about having this conversation right now if the Browns were even 3-2, 4-2, or what even week is it anymore? Regardless, if the Browns were 3-2, 3-3, whatever, I think we would still be sitting here like, they're trying at least, but now we're all just frustrated and pissed off because we're 1-5 and it looks like the season is chalked, if not already chalked, with the Amari Cooper trade, with the doubling and tripling and quadrupling down on Deshaun Watson as the starting quarterback right now. I'm looking forward to seeing what quarterback we're going to bring from the draft. And I hate that that's the feeling that excites me the most for the Cleveland Browns right now, is that. And the jersey purchase that's probably going to tie with that, which goes back to taking us for granted. But go ahead, Erik.
By the way, I mean, just one last thought, because I know we got to wrap this up today. But if Stefanski, there's one of two things. Either he actually thinks that Deshaun Watson puts us in the best position to win, which I just can't believe that. I don't care what practice shows. I mean, the dude is seeing phantom tacklers out there. Talk all you will about our offensive line, but when he has time, he's pulling the ball down. He's missing wide open receivers. I mean, terrible. Tim, you could be right. Maybe they don't. But from the plays that we see, you have guys wide open in their routes. All he has
Yeah.
to do is make the throw.
You
I
watch the
think
all
he's
22 and he's jumping around the pocket and holding it too long with receivers wide open. Continue,
with
Eric.
plenty of protection. So I think it's between his ears. So one of two things. Either Stefanski's in that moron group or he's being told to start Watson. And I got to say, I lose a little bit of respect for the guy that I understand it's a job, but he's made millions of dollars that he doesn't say, hey, I don't want to start the guy. I have to start the guy. And maybe that starts to tear apart the locker room. I don't know. But the fact that he goes up to that podium and he gives us Deshaun Watson gives us the best.
See, I disagree with you because you start tearing apart the locker room and the fabric and losing your job and all of that as soon as you don't look like a united front, even if you don't agree with whether it be Andrew Berry saying that they have to keep Watson in, whether it be Jimmy Haslam, which is the likely answer, or whether it be, Kevin Stefanski actually.
But why do they want to keep him in anyway? He
Because
can't
they
throw
paid him
football.
$230
He's an
million.
alleged rapist. Okay, but that's sunk lost. I mean,
I agree with you. It's
back.
time to bench the guy. I agree with you full-heartedly. I'm talking from the mindset of the billionaire who's taking us for granted and putting poor product out on the field.
I don't know. Well, let's wrap it up and get into hot takes.
Yeah, for sure, man. For sure.
Are you doing a Browns hot take?
I am.
Okay, then I was going to say I'll lead us off because I am doing Browns, but go ahead. Lead us off with your hot take.
Yeah, I paused it to use it as my hot take, right? Even though it's not really a hot take. If we're going to go down the route of using Nick Chubb in the run game more and not RPOs, but play actions with Njoku, Deshaun Watson needs to go. And I know this isn't a hot take in that aspect, but the hot take here is really in the fact that even when Deshaun Watson was MJ in cleats, Deshaun Watson in Houston, all the hype that we bought into and ultimately failed with, he was never a good play action quarterback, even in Clemson with college level scheming. He was good if the guy was wide open and it was an easy read, but because he's running on play action and can't do the scrambling Deshaun Watson magic, he's never been a good play action quarterback. And if we're going to go that route, which to me it looks like with the evolution of more run plays, Deshaun throwing less in the last game, it kind of looked more like the Kevin Stefanski offense, which is what I think we should be going back to instead of using any of this West Coast Ken Dorsey BS that we've tried to use with Watson. I think if we're doing that, the answer is Jameis Winston because he's always been a solid play action quarterback in the NFL. He's willing to take that chance. It's all the same thought process we have, but I'm just doubling down on it on my final thought and take. Maybe not the spiciest, but at least there's some factual backing behind this one and not being like Bo Naylor home run this week and leaving it at that. Go ahead.
I like it. All right. So my hot take is related to the Browns as well. I've been saying in the last couple weeks that I think we should trade Myles Garrett. And there were a lot of reasons for that. First and foremost is that, a player in his position just can't impact the game like a quarterback, for example. So he's not really doing us any good. The 1-5, the 0-16, the 1-15 seasons will show that. And what we could get for him in the arguably end of the prime of his career would be a haul. And today my hot take was going to be you should trade Myles Garrett, not because of any of that, but more than anything because the man just deserves to be on a winning football team. Like, I feel for him. But I have changed my hot take today, and it's because of Nick Chubb's article that landed this morning. So for those not familiar, Nick Chubb wrote an article talking about his recovery, and it's on the Players Tribune. You can go read it there. And he has talked about the Cleveland Browns that, it almost made me tear up a little bit reading this morning. How
beautiful article.
Ownership stood by him. How when everybody said you should trade him, you should cut him, he wasn't guaranteed any more money at that point. And yet they stood by him. And the reason that they told his agent that he didn't have to worry is because of how much he meant to the city of Cleveland. And I got to say, it gave me a little bit of hope because the organization got that decision right, in my opinion. And that's the organization that I love. Tim, call it what you will, but I'm a Nick Chubb fan. He's probably my favorite guy on the team, honestly. He's so soft-spoken and such a hard worker and such a good dude in general.
He embodies the city, period.
So well. Guys like him, guys like J-Ram that take a pay cut to stay here. Guys like Donovan that he didn't take a pay cut, but he stayed here. He could have gone to New York. He could have gone anywhere he wanted. I think people constantly underestimate Cleveland, underestimate Ohio, and it's such an amazing place, and he really is the embodiment of that. And that ownership made that move right gives me hope. So you know what? I'm back in. I'm being hopeful. We're going to get a quarterback, and we're going to turn this thing around. Next year, we're a playoff team. That's my hot take.
I love it, and I agree. I don't know why I agree, because they've given me nothing to say I agree, but I'm here. I'm here for it, man.
All right, everybody. That was At the Office. We thank you for sticking with us, to listening. Next week, I promise you, it's going to be the three of us. It'll definitely be Noah and I. So if John goes off somewhere, that's on him. But I think we'll be back in full force. Thank you, everybody, for watching and listening. Remember to hit that subscribe button, and we will see you next week. Peace.